Roses are red, violets are blue. April is National Poetry Month, and I am not a poet. But I did have a great conversation with a poet this week, and we discussed the topic of waiting. Listen in. Welcome to episode number 36 of the Unperfect Podcast. I'm your host, Shelley Sneed, and it's my desire to help you see glimpses of God's glory among the imperfections of your life. If you've ever struggled with fully living the life you've been dealt, welcome to being human. And you're not alone. Hope and most likely a bit of humor are coming up. I recently read a blog post by Sophia Light called When You're Stuck in the Waiting. And just that title speaks volumes, doesn't it? I'm guessing each one of us has been there, and many of us have been there numerous times. And I'll mention some of mine later in this episode. But here's one thing Sophia writes about waiting. She says, waiting is meant to be patient and earnest. Not patient and earnest for your desired outcome, but patient and earnest in seeking God's presence alone. The victory is not actually after the waiting. The waiting is the victory. If our real desire is to see Jesus as our prize, then seasons of waiting actually refine us and cause us to dive deeper into His presence, giving us what our hearts really long for. Once the waiting is over, whatever we were waiting for pales in comparison to the prize of His presence, which we already won in the waiting. Today, I'm going to be talking about this very topic, and even what I just read to you, we're going to touch on in this interview, which I conducted before I had even read that blog post. But I'm going to be talking about waiting spaces with the writer and poet Jody Lee Collins. She's the author of 3 books, 2 of which are collections of her poetry. She's a retired teacher who started writing when Smith Corona typewriters graced the desk of her 8th grade typing class. But nowadays, you can find her work online at her website or on Substack. And just last week on Substack, she actually wrote concerning her journey for her first collection of poems. And I'm just going to read some of it right here. Hope that's okay, Jody, because it's so fitting to what we're going to be talking about today. She said, "The first time I considered gathering my bits of paper, scribble-filled journals, miscellaneous files and folders of poems into a book was during the pandemic in early spring 2020, as one does. Those lockdown dates are indelibly tattooed on my soul, yea, skin deep it seems. I will always remember those anxious beginning days of fear and emptiness, followed by the weeks of gray not knowing. I'm sure you do too. My idea to publish a book of poetry focused on noticing the good, true, and beautiful seemed a fruitless endeavor in the midst of worldwide challenges and daily heartache. I realized we always have disaster and hardships with us. I couldn't simply sit and stew. The gift of those lockdown days were copious opportunities to sit and notice, lots of time to pay attention. Cobbling my poems together into a book kept me focused and occupied." Welcome to the podcast, Jody.
Oh, thank you. It's so fun to be here.
And I'll go ahead and admit here, I've never interviewed a poet on the show. I'm not even sure I knew a poet personally until I met you. But I love that your mission is to help people make friends with poetry. And I do love your poems. There's such a great blend of lightheartedness. And I'm all about a great sense of humor, but also really deep truths that you just state so creatively. So I'm excited to have you.
Thank you. Yay.
So we've been trying to get together for a while. It has taken us, over 6
Yes,
months
indeed.
to sync our schedules and life happening and all kind of good stuff. But before we jump in, I wanted to maybe give our listeners a chance and me to get to know you just a little bit better by playing a game. So if you're if you're game for this, it's called this or that. So I'm going to give you 2 options, and you've got to say which one you prefer. We'll do a few of these. And you're welcome to give a little line of disclaimer if you want when you give your answer. I'll start off with an easy one because
I think I already know what you're going to say. Okay, the first one is coffee or tea.
Oh, coffee, duh. I live in Seattle.
Why I thought you were going to say that. But I have to ask you, do you drink it black or with cream?
Oh gosh, with cream. And since the pandemic, I've added sweetener, which I never thought I would do. So yeah, I don't know what the deal is, but anyway.
Yeah.
Now it's sweetener too.
I love how we can blame everything on the pandemic now. It's just,
that's right.
Well, since the pandemic, I have to eat this many Hershey Kisses a day. Yes.
That's right.
Okay. I'm the same way. My granddad taught me to drink coffee and it was a dessert. So I think it was half milk and half sugar. Okay. Glass half full or glass half empty?
Oh, half full. Yes. I'm an Enneagram 7. I'm positive about everybody. I want joy and abundance for the whole world.
I love it. That's great.
I always assume the best.
Yes, I am also a glass half full. This may be why we've gotten along so well.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Fiction or nonfiction?
That has changed.
Okay.
I want to say fiction. In the last 3 or 4 years, I am loving stories so much more. I do not need more information. I need more inspiration,
Yes.
So
I totally get
good
that.
stories.
Yes.
Yes.
I think I can do nonfiction during the day, but at night when my brain is done, like it is like, I don't want any more information. That's when I like to get into a good book. The bad thing about that is then I can't put it down. So I'm up till 12 or whenever it ends. But,
right.
Okay. Wash dishes immediately or wait till the sink is full?
Wait till the sink is full and the countertop. I mean, yeah.
Okay. I'm starting to think we were separated at birth. I don't know what I'm going to do when my kids are all leave the house now, because I will let it sit there for days. And since I have kids that I can make go do the dishes,
right.
I know I'm going to have to get on that at some point. Okay. I got 2 more. One, this is about movies. Do you prefer a rom-com movie or a suspenseful thriller?
Oh, rom-com, of course. Yes.
Yeah, that's mine too.
I was going to say anything with Jennifer Lopez, but that's probably what I mean is something completely mindless that's not rated R.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally where I am. In fact, lately I can't even follow the suspenseful thrillers. They're too mind-blowing and they give me a headache. So, okay, here's the last one. A store where everything is free, or a restaurant where every dish is calorie-free?
Oh, holy cow, Batman.
Sorry, you have to choose.
Oh, I'm thinking a store where everything is free. I love thrift stores and I like garage sales. And actually, we just went to an estate sale in our neighborhood, and the people were trying to get rid of their father's things, and they gave us so many things. And the best thing I got was a garden gnome. I've wanted a garden gnome for my front yard forever. And they had one and they said, here, you can have it. And I said, oh my gosh, I have to give him a name. And they said, well, our dad's name was Dexter. I said, well, then his name is Dexter.
That sounds like a good garden gnome name too. Dexter the garden gnome. I love it.
That's right.
I love it.
Right.
And I have to say, I know you're into gardening. I can't keep anything alive. So that is where we differ, I guess. I'm the person that watered my roommate's fake plants in college. Like, I don't even know a fake plant from a real plant. So I wish I did. I think it would be amazing, but
someday.
Maybe one day. Thanks for being a good sport, jumping into that with us.
Sure.
But let's jump into our conversation on waiting, because I know this is going to be something that most, if not all of my listeners can relate to. The first and most extensive section of your new book, Binding the Bright Birds, is called Waiting Spaces. And I know on a surface level, it immediately makes me think of the North Carolina Department of Motor Vehicles. I'm not sure what it's like in the Pacific Northwest where you live, Jody, but if you're heading to the DMV here, you should plan on a minimum of like 4 hours. It doesn't matter what you need done. You are going to be waiting a long time. It's crazy. But today we're talking about being in spiritual waiting places where we feel like we're just kind of stuck waiting on God to move or give us direction or for the next thing to happen that we're thinking is supposed to happen. So can you just tell us a little bit of how you've experienced this in your own life?
Yes, I found a lot about this question. And because I think as a poet, I've started, writing in the last 4 or 5 years, lots of poetry. I think in metaphors, which is pictures. And a metaphor is a bridge from a physical thing to an idea. So because the physical world for me often mirrors a lot of what's going on interiorly, I don't know if that's a word, the first thing I thought about was construction. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Here's the thing about waiting. And I'm going to mention some, waiting for things to happen. There's 2 things about waiting. Sometimes we think if this would just get done, then I would be happy. I don't know if you think like that.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing about waiting is it's not a place, this is so trite to say, it's not a place you arrive at, but it's a journey, which is just so lame. So here's what I'm going to talk about. We've been in our house for 30 years, and my husband is the project man of all project men. And we've done some interior remodeling and things, and we've got some things going on outside. But I remember in 2022, we were going to have a lot of work done inside our house. And I kept thinking, I can't wait till I get my new floors. I can't wait till I get this popcorn ceiling removed. I can't wait till the walls are painted. I can't wait. When this is done, I'll feel so happy. Well, by the grace of God, the project was completed in like 4 months. And I remember walking into the living room thinking it was a beautiful place. I mean, our house was built in the 80s, so it definitely needed some help. And I remember walking back into the room and being happy that it was finished. I actually kind of cried a little because it was so pretty. But in my head, I thought, but gee whiz, I've still got this other stuff I have to deal with. And it's just funny. I think that because we're being made like Jesus, we're not ever going to get to a place of being complete. So I think waiting for me is learning how to trust God more, and that the thing we want to see happen, just because the exterior things change, because I've got projects going on outside. I'm like, when are they ever going to be done? They may not ever be done. Can I still be happy if they're not done? So
absolutely.
I probably wandered all over the place.
No, I love that. I love that. That was such a good reminder that we're never really content with anything in this physical world. Like we can get what that thing we've been waiting on forever, whether it's a physical thing or a career or a marriage or whatever, and we're still going to find discontentment. Like that's just part of who we are. I love what you said, that just being here in the world, and I'm all about that. That's the whole reason I started this podcast, and my blog was just, I've got to figure out how to be okay with everything not being okay and everything not being perfect, because it's, I think I kept waiting for that in my life. I kept waiting for all the pieces to come together, and then I've arrived. I'm going to be happy. And it's just never happened. Like I have moments of contentment where I see Jesus at work, and but it's not that, it's not an arrival point, but a journey. We have to keep reminding ourselves of that.
Well, and like C.S. Lewis said, I mean, the reason that we long for heaven or whatever, I'm totally badly paraphrasing, is, because we were made for another country.
Absolutely.
That's why when we have those momentary things, they strike us, because I think our spirit inside is like, that's what heaven is like. And part of us might feel sad. Oh, I wish everything brought me that joy and that contentment, but it's not. And that's okay, because you're made for another country.
Absolutely. Right? And if we do feel complete in something from this world, we have to ask ourselves, do I have some things out of balance? Because I'm always going to feel like I'm not quite home yet if I'm truly walking with the Lord. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, I love that. So honestly, I think the reason this topic just so resonated with me is because I feel like most of my life has been one big waiting room. And part of that's been my attitude, not just my circumstances. I remember my brother telling me once in college, because I wanted to be doing something different. He said, don't miss what God has for you now because you're looking so far to what you want, where you want to be in the future. But I think that's kind of how I've always lived my life. I had to wait for my husband to propose. I found out after we got married, when he went to buy his first pair of running shoes, it took him 3 months to pick out running shoes. Like, we went to every store in the Asheville area, and I thought, who does this? But it helped me see why the monumental decision of asking me to marry him took him so many years, because if he was that particular about running shoes. But then we experienced infertility, so waiting to start a family, or whether it's waiting for God to get me to the next place that I wanted to be. I just really have a history of struggling with that contentment. So I'm wondering, what has helped you during these seasons, with whether it's with being patient or faith, whether it's scriptures God's used in your life or practices? What has made waiting maybe a little more natural for you?
Well, I'm sure this is a personality thing, Shelley. God wired us all. He just did.
Sure.
In certain ways, in certain personalities. So I'm an Enneagram 7. And one of the things that we don't like to do is sit with discomfort or things that are hard. And we want to be somewhere else.
Right.
And so, like you, for most of my life, I've wanted to be somewhere else that I am not. And I am learning how to be better at being where I am right now. And saying, God, you are here with me now. So I think, it sounds just lame, but just perspective, like what really matters.
Right.
I've been walking with Jesus I've been married for 50 years, which I can't believe. I've been walking with Jesus a little bit longer than that. What really matters? How can I be content now and trust that Jesus loves me right here, right now, where I am in the middle of what I'm going through? I think perspective has really helped me, and learning to be with Jesus where I am now, because again, living in the future all the time says, if I could just get there, if I could just get there, if I could just, that's like letting the enemy rob you, right?
Exactly.
Of joy right now, because Jesus is with you right now, where you are.
That's really powerful. I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're right. The enemy does rob us of the joy. I love what you said about the perspective of being present. And I think that's been one of my hardest things. When I'm not where I want to be, I don't want to be present with where I am. But isn't that a gift from God? Like, isn't each day, isn't each moment a gift? And instead of going, I don't want this one, can I trade this in for the, I'm constantly returning stuff to Amazon. This is not what I thought it was going to be. I'm really glad they have the free shipping and stuff. But to say, I'd like to exchange this instead of, okay, this is what God has gifted me with right now, this season. How can I unwrap this in some way? I think that's the perspectives you're talking about.
Well, and he's here with me now because I don't want to sit with things that are difficult or sad or hard. Dealing with a lot of family stuff. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. We had some really challenging things happen in our family history in the last year. And I would rather be happy and joyful and not sit with sadness and disappointment. But Jesus says he would be with us in all those things. And I got saved. Is that okay to say?
Sure.
I got saved in the 70s. I got saved in the Jesus movement. But I think that part of that heritage was, once you become a Christian, your life will be so much better. And we wanted to jump right into, I am a new creation in Christ. Old things have passed away. There was a lot of stuff I didn't deal with.
Right.
And I didn't have a lot of room in my theology for the fact that, this could be hard. I could be sad. There could be some losses, talking about, whatever the dysfunction in my childhood or whatever, abandonment from my dad, just whatever thing. We all deal with different things. I kind of glossed over that. Yes, I knew Jesus, but he wants to walk with me through the healing I needed. And not wanting to sit with, oh, this was hard. There was loss. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I don't know.
Absolutely know
when you
what
tie
you're
a bow
saying.
around everything.
Exactly.
You can't tie a bow around everything.
Exactly. And I think, especially for those of us who grew up in the church, have known Jesus from a young age, and you just kind of think, if I check all these boxes, I'm going to have this sweet little peaceful the rest of my life. But yeah, but I also love what you're saying. The presence of God should be our focus. Like, do I want to be in an easy season or do I want to be in his presence? Like, if I had to choose, I think a lot of times in the past, I would have chosen the easier thing. But I'm getting to the place in my life, I think just a lot of years of trials and experiences that make me go, you know what? I want to be in his presence. I want to be communicating with him, hearing from him. Like, I would rather that than be in whatever next season I'm dreaming of. I would love for you to read one of your poems that we're going to focus in on today. And again, this is from your book, Minding the Bright Birds, Poems of Longing for Home. I have to tell you this. My kids made so much fun of me last week for the way that I pronounced the word POEM that I'm almost afraid to say it. So, poem, they coached me. I'm from the Deep South, and I guess the way I was saying it was really horrific. But when I told them the other night, I was like, y'all, I'm interviewing a poet. And they were like, oh my gosh, Mom, you're just going to bomb it. Don't say the word. So, okay. That has nothing to do with the poem. Poem. I can't say it. Okay.
It sounds lovely.
Thank you. It's called Exodus 13, and it's from this section in your book called Waiting Spaces. Before we get started, can you just tell us a little bit what's happening in this part of Scripture in Exodus 13?
Well, yes. And Shelley, I think it's a great segue to what you just said, because so the children of Israel are leaving, right? They're leaving Egypt. And it's so interesting how God leads them. But the first phrase I really noticed here was, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. And which has to do with how we want an easy way out of things.
Yes.
And that God chose them. Anyway, so the children of Israel are leaving Egypt, and God says, I'm going to lead you, but I'm going to lead you with a pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. And it did not depart before the people. And again, you were talking about how, do we want to be somewhere else or do we want the presence of God? That's what God promised them. He promised them his presence, but he didn't say, I'm going to show you absolutely everything that's going to happen. That's what was going on.
Okay. And I would love for you to just read the poem for our listeners, and then we can kind of explore some of it a little bit further.
Well, sure. Exodus 13. We are not fond of the chalky smudge, non-committal sky that resists clarity. We beseech the heavens for blue, cobalt perhaps, or robin's egg, a declarative palette to illumine our days, secure divine assurance that our plans will not be foiled. We long for clear light, glass to mirror sun's presence, reflect our daily mysteries, the uncertainty. But we cannot dwell forever in light. Brilliance can blind. We must have shadow seasons of in-between, the not yet of no clear answers, shuttered trust of, I am with you. The sky speaks this alone. Find my pillar of fire at night, the greeting of each new day in a cloud. Half in terror, half in wonder, we follow as questions lead the way.
I love that. I love your writing.
Thank you.
Just so poignant. So there are some powerful lines in here. Can you dive into this one line I want to ask you about in particular? Brilliance can blind. So first of all, what do you mean by that? Because I know what I take it to mean, which I think is kind of the beauty of poetry, is we could probably all each get our own illumination from a line or whatever. But what do you mean by that? And how have you seen that play out in your life?
Yeah, I'll answer that question, but I do want to acknowledge what you just said about poetry. I heard a poet say once that a poem becomes alive when it is read, because everybody brings something different to their experience of reading a poem. So Brilliance can blind. Well, I'm from Southern California, and I grew up at the beach, and I thought about how when you're standing on a beach, like at 4 p.m., well, even at noon, especially at noon, when the sun is overhead and it's just so brilliant, and you like look at the ocean and the sun is glancing off the water. It's just so bright. You can almost like not see things. And or think about standing on a stage. I haven't done this ever, but I think about being on stage, how all the spotlights are on you. You can't see what's in front of you.
Right.
And I think, and it just became so aware to me that shadows are what give things meaning. You know where stuff is. You know where things are when there are shadows. You know what I'm saying? And brightness is not all it's cracked up to be, I don't think. So anyway, that's kind of what was in my brain when I wrote it, but I'd love to hear what you thought.
Well, I didn't think anything that creative, which is why I'm not writing poetry. Everything you just said, like when you said shadows are what gives things meaning. And I thought back to the times in my life when everything is just going great. I'm not desperate for God then. I'm not clawing for a nugget of truth. And I'm probably not seeing things the way that I see them when I'm just desperate for him. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about the cloud. Again, the children of Israel following a cloud. Like they had no idea where they were going. They just knew, oh, man, we got to keep following this cloud.
Right. Right. You know, and it's funny. We have our own little Sunday school pictures of what these Bible stories look like. But
right.
I mean, it's quite possible that this was just a big thing of fog, you know?
That's what I think about it. Yeah.
That makes it even more mysterious. Like we can't see past our hands, that kind of, I think about that when I've been in deep fog and it's like,
yes.
I can't see past my hand. I don't know why that's so scary for us.
I think the longer I've been a believer, the less sure I am of being able to figure God out.
Sure.
You just can't, because what is his goal for us? That we would know him and be changed into his image. That's what he wants. I think it's the grace of God that he leads us through the wilderness, and that because he wants us to follow him and know him and seek his presence. That's really his goal. And when I say perspective, I was talking about perspective a while ago. I think that's why, because God has been showing me that's really my goal. Not that you would know everything or have it figured out or whatever, that you would know me. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, that goes back to that whole, do I want his presence or do I want his presence? Presents. You know,
there you go.
I want the good stuff or do I want the good God? Okay, so tell me about this last line that said, as questions lead the way. So half in terror, half in wonder, we follow as questions lead the way.
There is less that I am sure of the older I get, which just sounds like, why would I want to be a Christian if that's right. What a great advertisement. No,
yeah.
Because I think it really speaks to our human condition is we don't know where we're going, but we do know who we're following. Like you and I we memorized Psalm 91 together. And I remember,
right.
Under his feathers, I could think, God, what's up with all the feathers? Like why?
Right.
Because, and I wrote a poem about it, Psalm 91. I put it on my Substack. Why did you call yourself a mother hen? I mean, it's in there a lot. We're reading the book of Ruth now, and it's in there again. I'm like, what's up with the feathers? And I thought, because God wants to hide us, and it's his grace and protection that we can't see everything, that we don't know what's coming, that we are safe. Because if we saw everything, we'd try to figure it out ourselves, and then we wouldn't need him. So I think there's safety in knowing, not necessarily knowing where you're going, but who you're following. And yes, I have less and less sure answers the longer I walk with Jesus. So
I love what you just said about his protection and grace. It's his protection and grace that we can't see everything. So I do want to let you tell our listeners a little more about you and your book, where they can find you. But I like to ask all of my guests this one final question.
Yes.
And that is, if you could have a conversation with younger Jody, what would you tell her?
What I would tell younger Jody is slow down and enjoy your children, because you think that the challenges will never end, but they do. And I can tell you from having grandchildren that it's true. You might have grandparents in your audience that are listening. It's the best time of life. But I realized when my oldest grandchild's 21. So I remember when he was born, the joy that you get from playing with your grandkids. I keep telling myself, I wish I had done this when my kids were little. I think I was like, this can't be all there is.
Right.
Just playing with my kids and feeding them and cleaning the house and taking them places. But it's true. Investing in your children and spending time with them and playing with them. You're going to blink and they're going to be 21 years old. So just slow down and enjoy your kids. And that's probably not the answer people want to hear, but that's what I would tell myself. Because it would have been a lot more fun, I think. I mean, I actually dealt with a lot of anxiety and depression, postpartum depression. My kids are over 40, so it wasn't a thing when I was a young mom.
Right.
I think that's what I was dealing with after I had my kids. I think if I had, number one, talked about it with somebody and acknowledged what I was going through, like, oh my gosh, this is so hard, but embraced being a mom. I think there was the legit hormone thing going on, but also my mental attitude about this can't be all there is. I was made for something better, and oh no, spending time with your children is the best thing you can do. So that's what I would have told my younger self.
And that's such another great example of what we've been talking about with the waitings. I think sometimes when our kids are little, we treat it like a waiting space, right? Like,
yes,
gosh, I can't wait till they can wipe their own rear end. Oh, I can't wait till they can tie their own shoe. Like I went through a phase where we were not buying shoes if they weren't Velcro, because I was not tying another shoe or, whatever. They had to be able to do something for themselves. But it is so hard when you're in it, it feels so consuming. And it feels like you're kind of waiting for that next space. But yeah, I love what you're saying. And I have I would give myself the same advice. It's just slow down and be present in this moment.
Yes. And it's not just waiting until they can do the next thing. It's just as if where I am doesn't matter.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah.
When you're with your kids, that is where you need to be present. It's not just waiting for certain stages. It's not a waiting room. It's a be there now room. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it just goes back to wherever I am in this moment, do I believe God's put me here? Do I believe that he's working? Do I believe that even if I can't see major Billy Graham proportion activity, spiritual fruit, but do I believe that he can use me wherever he's got me, wherever I feel like I'm being held, like against my will, like I'm being held, that he's holding me there. There's a reason. There's a ministry there. There's a purpose. Yeah.
I love it.
Very, very good stuff. Okay. So tell us where we can find you. I mean, you can tell us a little bit more about you and what you do. And I'll put links to everything you mentioned in the show notes as well.
I started writing online in 2012, and I started my website, a blog back in blogging days in 2012. So that was 12 years ago. So I still have a website. It's jodyleecollins.com, JODYLEE Collins.com. And there is a link to my Substack there at the top of the page. I have written 2 books of poetry. I actually wrote my first book in 2017 called Living the Season Well, Reclaiming Christmas. And it was a book I wrote accidentally because I swore I would never write a book because I could see how much trouble it was to write a book and then have to tell people about it. It still is out there in the world, and it will be revised soon. But yeah, my first book came out in 2017, but I wrote these 2 books of poetry. First one was in 2021, Hearts on Pilgrimage, Poems and Prayers, and then Minding the Bright Birds, Poems of Longing for Home. The reason I transitioned to poetry about 5 years ago in earnest was challenging myself to say more with less words, because obviously I like to talk. I'm a writer.
Right.
On my website, there is a link to my Substack, and you can click on that. My Substack is called Poetry and Made Things. And if people go to either one of those places, but click on my Substack and go to, if they subscribe, I have a free download. It's just called 5 Things That Surprised Me About Poetry, which might surprise you as well. And there's a little link there too to purchase my book. But yeah, that's where they can find me in all my writing. So
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that you accidentally wrote a book.
Well, yeah.
I just love. I love your use of words. I just love it.
Yeah, it kind of wrote itself. So.
Yeah, and like I said, I'll put all this in the links. But I like using your poems here in this book, in your newest book, as it's almost can be like a devotion, because I can read it, and I can it just makes me really think deeply about whatever the topic is. So I love that. But y'all, you do need to go to her Substack and get her newsletter, because she also writes hilarious poetry. I love the one when was it your plumbing went out one day?
Oh my gosh, the Ode to Showers.
Ode to Showers.
And hot water. Well, or the one I wrote about what my grandkids will say about me on Oprah. Or something.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes. I am so glad that we got to do this. It was so much fun. We need to do it again.
Yes.
And thank you so much for hanging out with me today on the Unperfect Podcast.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Shelley.
Thanks so much for listening to the Unperfect Podcast today. I pray you found some hope to hold you in your waiting space, and that you're able to zero in on God's presence that is with you even now, especially now. As always, I'm praying you have a blessed week and are able to see glimpses of glory in the now and the not yet of your unperfect life. See you next time.